Hello, everyone. Welcome to the AI Fluency webinar, the long-awaited webinar on AI Fluency. I'm going to quickly just set a few rules of engagement before we start. So we're going to start with a keynote where I'm going to set a bit of the scene for AI Fluency, and then we'll move into a panel discussion with Jay and Stephen. We will chat more about AI Fluency in terms of hiring and in terms of team dynamics. So just some rules of engagement. You can see us or me right now, but we can't see you. But there is a Q&A tab, so please pop your questions in there. You can also upvote questions that you feel really passionate about. And then, yeah, say hi, share your thoughts, and then connect with others that are also in the webinar. Cool, I just want to make sure that we can see all the things. Okay, great. So let's get started. We're going to chat about taste today as this new differentiator when defining the next gen engineer. Quite a juicy topic, especially if you've been doom scrolling LinkedIn like I have. So let's dig in. Before we start, just some real talk on like where we are currently, what's the state of the market. The obvious part is that AI is everywhere, and that every engineering team is using it, or at least trying to in some form. So agentic IDEs, LLM chat tools, agents, it's becoming the new norm. But the interesting point is that what we hear from a lot of teams is that they really struggle to define like what does good look like in the AI era. And I think that we're still very much in exploration phase, and I think it's probably going to still be like that for a while, or at least that's what we're seeing in our team. So yes, teams are already moving faster, but I think a lot of other teams are also stuck in this like loop where they know that there's this big like learning curve that would initially slow them down before it speeds them up. And we can see that in the recent tech leader survey that we did, that a lot of the respondents said that AI's capabilities are overhyped. My opinion is that these teams potentially haven't overcome that initial big learning curve to get the gains from AI. So what we see a lot is even within the same company, you've got different product teams approaching AI differently. And it's really common for companies to maybe have one AI wizard, but like no shared language for risk and practice and patterns. We all have that exec that thinks they can vibe code. So we see that happening a lot. So there's this question about like, what does great like AI-enabled engineering teams really look like? And that's the tricky bit, because I think that, yeah, for a while, that is still going to be hard, but we're going to try today. And this is especially important when a lot of teams still measure output over impact when it comes to using AI. And then thirdly, I think something that all leaders are aligned on is that companies know they need AI fluent talent. The need for developers is not going away, but the hiring process for this isn't super well defined. We also know that it's amplifying people. So if you really have strong fundamentals already, strong systems thinking and product sense, it's going to make you more effective. But there's this pressure to like deliver 10x. So on the one hand, you've got that pressure, and then on the other hand, you've got hiring processes that still limit the use of AI and follow a lot of the older style like whiteboard type assessments or take assessments or take home assessments that don't really test for that property. So why does this matter? So as I said, adoption is high, but I think understanding really is not. And what that really impacts is how we define success within teams, team performance, individual performance, deciding who's great in their job. And we can see in this data that we recently got from the tech leader survey that for a lot of respondents, they either say that it is really hard to define what makes a great engineer, or they're neutral, they're maybe still deciding, but the greater majority feeling like they can't necessarily say what makes a great engineer today. So what are some of the common themes there? Some of the things we hear engineers say, but also companies. There's this fear that AI is enabling companies to do more with fewer people. So we see a lot smaller teams, tighter hiring budgets, smaller job pools. And also this kind of skepticism about hiring juniors, because there's a fear that they're shifting away from core skills to more AI interaction. And so a lot of companies just refuse to hire juniors who can't pass traditional tech assessments. So yeah, that's something that we'll definitely touch on later in the panel discussion. And then vibe coding definitely continues to have a bit of a bad rap as blind code generation. And so there's been this movement towards agentic engineering involving a lot more careful specification and architectural oversight. And then lastly, we add in this layer of expected product mindedness. So companies expecting engineers to be the full package, less programmer, more problem solver. And yeah, just saying all of this, I think we can all agree that it makes it even harder then to define like what this next gen engineer looks like. So let's quickly get into the product-minded engineer before we get to the juicy part of what we're going to talk about today, which is taste. So we've got this rising importance of engineers who can think beyond code, solve the right problems, focus on impact over output. But that is not what we're going to be talking about today. What we are going to be talking about today is about creating this shared mental model for AI fluency and what that means and how that helps us define what great talent looks like. We don't have all the answers, but we definitely have a hot take today based on our own learnings and industry opinions. And this is really important because companies need to hire and they need to retain really good talent, but AI fluency isn't yet well defined. And so hiring processes and performance processes really struggle to test for it and to measure it. So let's talk about AI fluency first. What is it not? It's not prompt engineering or vibe coding. It's not shipping AI features fast. It's not tool breadth and familiarity, so just like knowing lots of tools. It's not these things. So Michael Truel from Cursor, he's one of the co-creators. He talks about this world after code where the role of engineer isn't disappearing, and we've said that, but rather that engineers are evolving into high-level architects of knowledge, as we can use AI to handle a lot more of the grunt work, but there's this shift towards higher order skills like taste and good communication. And this is a really nice quote where he's saying that it's going to become more about the effortless translation of what you want to build, how you want it to work, and what you want it to look like. And that's what we're going to be digging into today. So when I think about product taste, this is where my mind goes. It's going to give a sake for everyone to appreciate the banana-generated pixel art. So let's unpack what it actually means. So there's kind of three things here that we're going to unpack around what is meant by taste and how that impacts our idea of AI fluency. I guess you can maybe refer to them as taste notes. So we can just go along with the theme. So I don't think it's an entirely new concept, but taste, definitely AI makes that unavoidable. It really like brings that to the fore, where engineers and PMs and designers are all building end-to-end experiences together. So you kind of see this move from going from just writing code to actually designing logic and instructing AI to build really clear, elegant systems and own the output. And so AI handles a lot more of the how and the grunt work, while the humans can focus on the what and the why. So this is really important, just to, I think, preface this, that this is not a departure from like good principles. You kind of need to know the rules in order to break them. But it's the way that you're communicating what you want to build by still following good system design, security, and architecture. And so not surrendering control to AI, but rather supervising it. And just lastly, like, why do we need this? Like, what is the behavior that you'll see when this is done well? Is that you'll have software that the whole team can interact with in a meaningful way, especially the code base. So using AI to get summaries, understanding existing features, investigating issues, and so really a base for faster iteration and space to be more creative. So that's taste note 1, is this idea of logic design. Taste note 2 is about impact over output. So if you don't have that, the fact that you're going faster because of AI just creates a lot of wasted effort. So there's two important things here. The one is solving the right problem because you understand your user needs really deeply. And the second one is creating that experience, creating like great UX, delightful experiences, things that your users will really remember and feel like it's truly solving their problem. So because of AI, it's a lot cheaper to build software, but the real secret is building the right thing. Like, what do you choose to build that will have the biggest impact on the business? And even though it's cheaper, there's still an opportunity cost. So if you don't build the right thing, or you're building everything, you could end up with a bloated feature set that nobody uses. So that's the first part, is choosing what is the best problem to solve. The second one is, how do you choose to solve that problem? So the value here really is understanding your user as a human, their wants and their needs, like one human relating to another. So that's the first part. And then AI prototyping tools are great. They can read your design system. They can easily create realistic prototypes faster than we can design them. And we've recently seen that like in practice. And you can also use it to stress test ideas early and cheaply. But the designer should still sit in the driving seat of having that like deep-rooted understanding of the user problem and the design psychology behind what we're trying to build. And what you end up with is a little bit more space to be distinctive, be a little weird, do something differently, surprise your users. Because in a world where AI builds things that kind of all look the same, that is the one thing that would help set you apart. So taste note 3, I mentioned AI is not knowing lots of tools. So here it's like going from knowing lots of tools and experimenting it to actually using that experimentation to craft shared AI fluency standards in your team. So there's new AI tools literally every week, I feel. But if you've got engineers in the team that actually run active experiments and demonstrate curiosity by staying current, that means that the team has these tight feedback loops that are curiosity driven, and they can validate what works, what doesn't work, and all agree on like what good looks like, what are the risks, what are the privacy concerns. And that really helps the team then form this like shared idea of taste. It's not just one person in the team. So to bring this all together, why does taste matter? Everyone can build faster, but the real differentiator here is how you can actually push the boundaries of your craft to create memorable user experiences and solve the right problems while you're doing that. So now when I think about product taste, it looks a little bit more like this. So having that continuous discovery and validation, being able to instruct AI to build elegant systems and choosing the right problems to solve, but solving it in a really delightful and memorable way for your users. So the key takeaway here is that if you can instruct AI to build clean systems that you'd actually ship, if you understand your users well enough, you can create delightful experiences and own the safety of what you're producing. And to us, that is really what AI fluency means in a nutshell. So the question that we now want to answer is, how can candidates actually show their AI fluency or decide where to upskill, and how do companies actually design their hiring processes to test for AI fluency? And there's a lot of different areas we can focus on here, but today we're going to focus on the individual side of an AI fluency model and the hiring side. So what we've come up with is the AI fluency taste test for engineers as well as for companies, focusing on what you've built, how you've used AI to build it, and then what are the things that you considered in terms of responsible AI use. So let's dig in. So what does the AI fluency taste test look like? So if you want to showcase this, whether you're looking for a new job or if you're actually just want to level up your taste factor, what are the things that you need to think about showcasing or developing? So the first one is how you use AI. So what I'm referring to is not necessarily like what model or tool you're using, but rather finding a way to codify your workflow to explain how you're using AI to multiply yourself. So that is kind of, yeah, that's the big thing here, is like not just the tools that you're using, but how you're using things in combination to articulate how you're crafting software and actually multiplying yourself. So that's the first one. The second one is what you've built. So the key thing here is being able to show recent examples of things that you've shipped. It could be something that you've done at your company or a side project that you're doing, and how you've used AI as part of the workflow of creating that thing. So why you built it, and also why it was worth building. So you can see how that touches on the thing that we spoke about earlier around value and impact. And then most importantly, like what changed because of it? Was it worth building, and did it change user behavior or have an impact on the problem that you wanted to solve? And then thirdly, responsible usage. So I mentioned explaining why while you're getting the productivity benefits of AI, not compromising on user trust and security and compliance, because those things still remain really important, as it always was, but now more important than before. So I'm going to quickly go through this, which is more the hiring side of it. So we've now gone through, okay, like these are the things that candidates can do. What do companies actually need to do in order to assess it? So the first one is really like this one is even more important than before, but understanding how engineers reason. So not just what they ship, but how they think about articulating the system design and the product-minded thinking while they're thinking through the solution, how they're solving the problem. The second part is, okay, now we want to know what we assess, like how do we assess that? I'm saying we as OfferZen, but encourage candidates to use AI tools freely, but we want them to be able to show us prompts that they were used, how AI informed the decisions, and then where they may be ignored or had to correct AI. And then lastly, we spoke about product mindedness and user value, but creating space for product thinking and testing that with engineers. So we recently run like a design sprint as part of an engineering sim day, where there was no coding done, but we spent the day thinking through a solution and how it would actually tackle a very specific business problem that we had. And so if you've done this as a hiring manager, what do you want the ideal outcome to be? You want strong candidates to be able to walk through their decision-making flow, explain how they've thought about the future, the constraints that they were facing, and then what impact they want the final result of that thing that they've come up with maybe during a tech assessment to then be on users. So these are things that are important when hiring and when looking at the different kind of taste profiles of engineers. And by now you might be wondering, well, OfferZen, you're a job search platform. How are you actually thinking about this topic and making it part of your project? So surprise, here's a bit of a sneak peek at some of the bits from our upcoming candidate profile release. While we know that tech roles are changing, as I said, like there's so many new dimensions to being an engineer, we actually want to allow candidates to represent all of these new dimensions. So both AI fluency, but also product taste through things like a really great project section where you can explain the business problem that you've solved, the impact that it had, and how you used AI as part of solving that problem. More to come on that. But let's wrap up. I just want to end with this quote, and it's that AI can make a good developer great, but it can't make a bad developer good. So what it's actually doing is amplifying people. If you already have strong fundamentals in systems thinking and product sense, AI makes you more effective. If you don't have that, those are definitely skills that you need to work on in order to be truly AI fluent. Cool. So now I'm going to just stop sharing. We're going to go into a bit of a panel discussion with Stephen and with Jay. Cool. So we're going to kick off with each of Jay and Stephen telling us a little bit more about their current role and then how AI shows up in your day-to-day workday.
Okay, let's kick off. I guess I'll go first then. Sure. So hello, everybody. Great to be here. I am currently a tech lead at OfferZen. Yeah, how AI shows up every day in my work. I think something that I want to mention on this is maybe a good way to kind of package it is good AI usage is reducing the latency from the idea to the thing that you ship in all the different aspects. So that's how, for me, it's been such a game changer, where previously there's so many manual steps in between all of those stages. And good AI usage in my world and what I'm looking for in others is how can you compress a lot of the latency between those different steps and use AI to do that, so you can really focus on the idea and shipping the right products. That's maybe in a nutshell what I see good AI usage is and how it shows up in my day-to-day.
Nice.
Cool. Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all again. I am currently the Chief Innovation Officer at Zenmark. We protect your email from being spoofed. That's what we do. I used to work at OfferZen, so it's my crew. Happy to be home. AI, what do I do with it at the moment? I have a forward deployed engineering team that works with me. I'm currently building, which I'm loving. And we are trying to reduce not only the latency from concept to ship thing, but concept to proven customer value. So we're trying to take even those next couple of steps to try and see how much AI we can sweat, how much we can reduce the feedback flows, the data analysis, all of that stuff. So just ultimately, I see our job as product people, developers, to take ideas and turn them into solutions. We're all problem solvers. And this just presents a massive opportunity for us to totally compress all of the bits, all of the meetings, all of the back and forth, all of the stuff that really is just opinions, get stuff in front of customers, see if it adds value. If it does, do more. If it doesn't, change. So yeah, got a FDE team, which is like some vibe coders, like XVP products and stuff. Some people with CS degrees, quite a mix, intentionally. Some like deep devs, and then also work directly with like core engineering, marketing, a whole bunch of other teams. It's super cross-functional now.
Nice. So I think, yeah, we've established that it's really important in what we're doing in terms of solving problems as product people. So I wanted to kind of chat a little bit more about, we spoke a lot about AI fluency. So just what that looks like for you in practice, in like your own work that you do with your team, but also that you do by yourself. Don't know who wants to go first.
I'll go first because Jeremy cool. First last time. Yeah, so I was recently hiring on OfferZen for someone for my FDE team, and I successfully hired. So thank you very much, team. We found someone, and I'm very excited about this stuff you showed us because it's going to help a lot. I think the framing from my side is I'm not looking for AI fluency as a skill or an extra page or something. It just has to be part of being an adopter of the most effective solution to solve the problem. So whatever the process is, I'm looking for people to use the best tool. And that's also like, I really liked your sim day idea of just come up with the ideas, you know, and I expect people to be using AI in that process, crunching an enormous amount of data or taking in a bunch of things or doing some really rapid research, or in design thinking, expanding the diamond, you know, like I said, we're problem solvers, but each aspect of AI fluency means, you know, you've got to identify the problem, right? Then you've got to come up with potential solutions, and you want to get 10 out, maybe 20, run through how those might fit. Then you need to assess those against your priorities and what your existing patterns are of problem solving. You know, maybe one of the problems is, or the solutions is put AI everywhere, put LLM responses, but maybe that's not the pattern you've got. So you start building. Another thing I'm looking for is, am I documenting as I go? You know, am I just each thing, am I throwing that, summarizing it, Fathom calls, doing all of that stuff, shipping it, so that the next time I run the loop, the agents know what I'm doing and they've got the context and all that kind of thing. So the AI fluency is really, and we used to do it in the early days of Office, and we would sit and watch someone work over their shoulders, you know, like how do they use Alt Tab or do they click? You know, are they using keyboard shortcuts? Because you're always looking for the shortest route to value, because we want speed and we want people to be at the top of their game. So I think that idea of watching people work and see where they're looking for the shortest path to value, that's what I call it these days.
Nice. I think the documentation thing is also really important, which relates very much to the logic design. If you don't know about it, you kind of need to get AI to help with your code base and it doesn't understand what is actually happening. But Jay, do you want to maybe give your view on the fluency bit and how that shows up for you?
Cool. Yeah, sure. So I think if I had to go back, like for the kind of devs that are in the chat, if you think about what it was like when you first started, your context window was so full with the specifics of what you were doing. So I wrote PHP for most of my career, and I got really, really good at like the nuances of PHP. And it took all of my time and effort going up as a junior and an intermediate to kind of focus intently on the syntax and building this thing. And there wasn't a lot of time and space necessarily for me to kind of look at the bigger picture. And this is true of most people, where we all had like really hard things to do. And because we all focused on our hard things, we couldn't as much look at the broader kind of picture of stuff. So where AI fluency, I think, comes in is like that world is largely changing. The difficulty of the day-to-day moments of our job have changed, so we can abstract those away to an AI and figure more about the system level thinking of how these things all piece together, how they work together and go towards our goal. So for me, that's what AI fluency is. It's not, I still have to have those skills and be able to use them, but the day-to-day moments of what I'm actually doing is now allowing me to kind of see the bigger picture. And that's quite a change, I think, for us as devs to be, well, we actually are all product engineers now, because we're not just writing code in a little basement somewhere for nothing. We have to start seeing the bigger picture and how those pieces fit together. Yeah, so I think that's largely where our fluency comes in.
Nice. Yeah, I think that's well put, because if you then have that extra mind share, then you can hone in a lot more on like the product mindedness side of the role, which is really great. Cool. On that note, kind of, do you have a task or something specific? Maybe Jay, you mentioned like the way that you've like changed the way that you work, but a specific like story or task that used to be really hard, but it's easier now or trickier because of AI.
Interesting. Okay, so I think the clear slam dunk winner, even from like early days of AI getting good, so we're talking like early 2024 onwards, was definitely prototyping. It used to be so difficult. I remember sitting with Balsamiq, if you ever used that tool before, and like painstakingly putting together a wireframe and then handing over to designer, and then this back and forth with like building a mock-up for 2 weeks to be able to create a thing. And the fact that you can just kind of have an idea and super quickly be able to build a prototype. It doesn't have to be perfect, but like a real thing that you can interact with and play with and press the buttons and stuff happens. And that's almost instant is massive. Like that's just been an incredible game changer. Along those lines, I think also diagramming, same thing. It's like building all the boxes and the arrows and having to manually read all of your code to figure it out. Getting AI to be able to give you summaries of it, build diagrams, and just shorten and compress that whole process, I think is definitely a thing that's just so much easier than ever. Things that are harder, I think there's two big things. One is this idea of sustainable velocity. It's very easy for stuff to get rapidly out of hand, especially once it starts interacting with other systems and you've got change management and all of this. I think it's harder than ever to ensure that you're getting the appropriate balance. I'm sure we'll cover that just now a little bit deeper. And I think kind of in a similar vein is consistency kind of throughout your code base, like establish the right guardrails and patterns and like ensuring everybody's on the same page about like how we're doing this when they're not writing the code is a really interesting challenge that we're trying to solve at the moment.
Nice. Yeah, everyone hates documentation, so love it. AI can do a lot of that. Steven?
Yeah, documentation is a great one. And in a similar set, like understanding what I'm looking at in the absence of the previous person actually making me do some documentation. So that I think like the what's going on here, that for me, that processing is incredibly powerful. So whether it's a code base or whether it's 14 disparate documents from 4 different strategies across like the Xcode, just like synthesizing what is like synthesizing essence, you know, trying to figure out what's actually happening. I don't think it's perfect there, but it helps process much faster and kind of get things smaller to a point where you can ask your next question, if that makes sense, as opposed to just wheel spinning. So I find that often I'd feel completely inundated or overwhelmed with the thing I need to do, and it'll just bring me down to, and even if it's wrong, then I correct it, and I'm like, no, that's not right. Let's go this direction. But it creates action, and I think for me that's something that's the most useful tool. If you don't know what to do, start a conversation with your AI agent of choice. That for me has been super useful because it creates action, which speeds everything up.
Nice. Yeah, sometimes like having someone that you can just always sound with, which I find really useful.
Yeah.
Cool. So I want to pivot a little bit to hiring. Stephen, you mentioned that you were recently hiring.
Yes.
So yeah, and you mentioned like what are the things that you look at and don't look at. So what's tricky, I think, about the evaluation of AI fluency component and skills that you want your team members to have?
Yeah, I mean, you just can't evaluate outputs anymore. I think the traditional recruitment flow is you throwing things over a fence to each other, right? Like, here's an assignment, and then throw back an answer, and neither of you know whether how that thing was created or responded to, you know. And there, it's really hard to understand that process. And this has always been the case. It's just more acute now. So elapsed time thinking together is basically the best thing you can probably do, or working together. So I'm still a huge fan of the OfferZen Sim Day, and seeing people do the work. And then when there's an artifact, just digging really deep, asking questions. And if people don't know, then it's a warning sign. If it matters, because there's things that matter and there's things that don't in an assignment. I actually don't know what the AI did there. I was someone was representing the assignment, and I said, "What happened?" Yeah, and they were like, "Actually, don't know what the thing was going on about there," but it was insignificant and it was peripheral, and I was kind of okay with that. But when it matters, I want you to know exactly what's going on and what direction you gave it. So, as you say, and one thing we used to do is hand drawings from notebooks, like send me those. Still do that to this day. And it's counterintuitive because we're testing AI fluency, but you've got to test the inputs to the AI. I think that's the major thing.
Mm-hmm. For sure. Yeah, Jay, I know like we've also recently gone through hiring. I think, yeah, as you said, like that logic design component and like how you're like using your craft to instruct AI well. Like how have you seen that play out recently while we've been hiring as a team?
Yeah, I think also just reading the chat and seeing what people are saying about kind of the de-skilling that's occurring, because I think it does tie into this. Something that I feel very strongly about is you can never say, well, AI produced this output, so therefore, like, I'm not responsible for it. Like, ultimately, you are still the owners of your system completely, right? Like, you are 100% responsible for what you're creating. And what we found, especially like we hadn't quite developed our hiring processes yet, is we'd be getting tons of technical submissions where people didn't know what the AI had done, why it had done, or what the trade-offs were. We were just getting these projects which looked okay, but the moment you dig a bit, there wasn't an ownership of like what was created here. I think that's for me a massive challenge in that you can't just completely abstract that technical side. Like a skill that's going to be incredibly important and one that we should be testing for even in the early stages of hiring is the ability to read code, the ability to understand the kind of architecture of what's happening there and be able to like do that pretty rapidly and be able to see the difference between a good set of code, a bad set of code, a good interface, a bad interface. That's going to become incredibly critical to test for early on, because if you really want to get to that level where you are orchestrating agents at a high level and you're building incredibly fast, that only comes because you've got such a deep understanding of what good code looks like and how it works. So I think we need to be screening for that stuff earlier on. So basically I'm saying is screen less for the ability to write code, more for the ability to read and understand code and establish that. And then as you get deeper into the process, start looking more at the kind of decisions that are being made, the judgments that are being applied, the product mindedness that's going on there, because both sides are important and we can't just like not focus at all on the technical side. They go hand in hand at the high level. So yeah, I think that's basically that.
Nice. Yeah, I really like that, how you put it. So yeah, I think while we're on that topic, from like the candidate side, I think we've now spoken about like maybe you and Stephen as like people that are hiring. What advice would you have to developers to actually showcase their skills and what they can do, maybe even before you've interviewed them, like even at like the point that you're sourcing them, like what are the things that you would want to see and look at?
Yeah, get Keith or Stephen's take on this one first.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me is like, just give me your philosophy. Like, write it down. What do you think about AI? Everybody I spoke to, I just wanted to ask them. And they're like, they don't know, right, which camp you're in. They're like, oh shit, if I say, I just use it for everything, or if I say I don't use it for anything, if I'm in the like, please use it as much as you can camp, then they've picked a side. There's this like little standoff that happens. So I would love to see in a portfolio just what your approach is. As I'm going through OfferZen profiles, what do you think about this whole story? Like, what's the do's, what's the don'ts? How do you feel about it? Because it's new, and that will make a match for me or not. Some people are looking for devs that don't want to use too much AI, and they're not going to use it in the assignment. Some people are looking for, like, our projects are like POC rapid stuff, so I don't mind a little bit of vibe coding and stuff. But if you don't know what you're doing, if you've never written code before, if you're not actually a maker, I don't want to. So I just want to see that. It's like, what is your philosophy? What do you understand is the opportunity? What do you understand is the threat? Is that kind of clear thinking? If that's clear and I can read that the person has thought about it, then I can tell whether they're using the tools or not. And I can tell whether they're using them responsibly. And I can tell whether they're going to continue to adopt the new tools, whether they're just doing it because they were told to. So that's a super powerful artifact for me.
Nice. I like that. I think that new AI fluency profile section captures that well. Jay, your side.
Yeah, I think that's solid. I think that's a really great summary of that side. I think looking more at just like the kind of the realities of it, from like setting up projects and whatnot, you used to be able to get away with kind of crappy UX and like sort of everything looked a little bit wonky, but it worked kind of because the actual act of writing code was so difficult that if you had stood up a project at all, people were like, oh, well, this person clearly kind of knows something because they're able to build. And I think that world is pretty much gone. Like the standard for what is expected is going to be so much higher because you're going to be able to use AI to fill in those gaps. I think there's still some level of T-shaped skills here. If you are a front-end absolute expert, like, every aspect of the React rendering cycle where you could build incredible stuff there, showcase that, but use AI to maybe cover some of the more weaker aspects, like the back-end side, and also explicitly state those trade-offs and how and why you did it, right? So I don't think that it completely kills skill expression. I think the opposite allows you to really highlight your skills while also making sure that you're showcasing something that's of a high enough quality that makes people stand out, makes you stand out. So I think that's sort of like just on the practical level, because I think Stephen's answer pretty much covers it. But like that's what I'd want to see from my project side is it's no longer good enough to give me some like nonsense project that barely works. The standard's higher now. And I think we need to kind of come to terms with that.
Nice. Cool. So I think related to that, we spoke a little bit about how do we want candidates to showcase that we're hiring. I think now maybe getting to that point where we're like, cool, now candidates are thinking, or developers thinking maybe like, how do I level up? What are some of the skills that you think are going to matter the most in the next year? There was also a question in the chat about how developers realistically keep their development skills up to date when there's a lot of like groundwork coding to be done by agents in the future. Like how do they keep their core skills up to date and current? And then the other question is like, what skills then do you think will matter most in the next year?
Go ahead, Jay. I'm excited for your answer.
Cool. Yeah, this is an interesting one. So I'm in the same boat, right? Like I'm in a position where I don't think I've needed to write a line of code in 5 months, but I ship every day, all day. So it's like this weird world of which shipping is happening constantly, but there's the actual real risk of my skills atrophying is a very real thing. And I think something that I'm kind of learning, and I think it's a pattern you could do as a junior or as a senior anywhere in your career with AI, is pick some domain or area or space that you know nothing about. So for me, that's currently Golang and building CLI apps with Golang. No idea, don't know anything about that. But the process of now being very mindful about working with AI to create this thing, but now I care deeply about each of these lines of code. Why does it work that way? How does this whole packaging system work with it? Why does this thing make me constantly return an error before I can return anything else? Is leveling me up massively as a software developer, because it's shifting the way I see software in general. So I think the skill of being able to kind of get out of like a specific narrow focus and look at kind of software engineering more broadly and allowing AI to be a teaching partner in that is going to help keep your skills from atrophying. At least that's what I'm finding. And I think the same kind of thing is going to be the case for juniors. You can't, as a junior, just be like, build me an app and then like go have your coffee and come back. You've got to take ownership of your learning and make sure you are being extremely curious about what's happening there so that you can kind of get to the next level. Otherwise, you're going to hit a ceiling extremely quickly and you're not going to be able to progress. So I think the one skill is being mindful and caring about the technical details, but at a more kind of oversight level. And I think along with that, systems level thinking will be a requirement across the board, is how pieces fit together. How does this actually eventually turn into a product that impacts users? You can no longer shield yourself from that reality of everything you're doing, even if you're a backend dev working in API, impacts the product in some way. And you've got to be thinking about how does that happen? How does my piece fit into the broader picture, and evaluating that. So yeah, I think that's largely what's going to matter: systems thinking and making sure your skills don't atrophy.
Yeah, I think the atrophy, like when you say let's keep our skills sharp, what skills do you want to keep sharp? Right? Like let's say you're a farmer and there's many things you need to do. Right? You have to worry about the weather, you have to think about the irrigation. One of those things is you have to pull a plow through a field. Okay. And you used to do that a lot. Right? And it was a thing, and you got better at it. And there's a way in which you did it, and it became a certain subset of a craft. And then someone came along with an electric plow, and you thought, okay, well, I've got this job of farming to do, but I like the craft of pulling the plow through, and it's really good. But this thing just does it, and you're like, oh, cool. You're offended. You got some existential issue, like, but fundamentally, your job is to provide food for your family and to provide food for the community that you live in and add value in the world, right? Now, like, do you want to go, cool, I see you, machine that can do the job, but I'm not going to let you do the job because I want to, or I feel attached to it, or whatever the story is. So, how am I going to? There's some skills we're going to have to let go of, and I know that sounds crazy, but you're going to have to let go of them in lieu of these other things that you're talking about, Jay. And I think the one thing that you've really spoken about today, which is like most important, is how do I build, if the machines are doing it, how do I build a new world where the machines are doing it and it's scalable and it's not going to break and it doesn't create a bigger mess and all of those things. Like you don't just, as you say, turn the machine on and go have coffee. You sit there and you learn and you work with it and you figure it out and you figure out what it does better than you and what it does worse than you, and you build a new farm that is faster, that generates more food for the community and gets things done thanks to this revolution that's happened. So I think it's about understanding what skills you need to continue to work on and what skills you need to adopt as new skills for the future.
Yeah, I think it's really cool. I like this farm analogy. I wish I knew who said this, but it was this idea that AI is on a farm like an incredibly good horse, and it's incredibly good at like moving fast and helping with specific tasks. Maybe that's pulling a plow or something like that. But a horse doesn't design the farm. And largely, that is the kind of world that we need to be looking into. We need to know very well what a horse does and what it looks like when a horse is doing its job well. But we can never kind of let go of that oversight of we've got to make sure that this thing as a system is operating well with many horses. So yeah, I think that's maybe a good kind of way to put it. Maybe we're going too far in this farm analogy, but I think it's a good one.
Well, so we take it one step further. How do juniors fit into this farm where there's a big AI shift? I know, Jay, you touched on it a little bit, but keen to hear a little bit more about like how juniors should approach their career development and what they focus on. You already mentioned some of the skills, but I think specifically where juniors find themselves between getting those core skills, but also knowing how to leverage AI.
Yeah, I've got interns that are shipping insane stuff like that, and they're smart and they're farmers. They're not plowers, and they arrived at the farm, and I studied plowing, but I actually want to do farming, and there's an electric plow there, and he's like, "Cool, I'm going to jump on it and figure it out." So he's learning the new world, right? He's not attached to the plowing or anything. He's just there. He's just like, "Cool, I'm going to solve problems. I'm ambitious. I want to move forward, and I want to solve this problem and contribute to the world." So the tools just don't matter to my intern. He's just like, "Cool, let's go." And I think there's beauty in that. As a craftsperson and as a builder, there's a sadness too, But maybe we have to find a new craft and figure out what that new craft looks like and what that new career is. So I think I'm not worried for juniors. I'm worried for juniors that want to become plow people. I'm not worried for juniors that want to make a change in the world. I think they've got the world's their oyster.
Yeah, that's great. I'm worried for seniors who also want to be plow people. I'm worried for anybody who wants to like very narrowly focus on that one small aspect. Yeah, so I spoke about this quite a lot on Tuesday about like kind of this idea of a healthy engineering team and how a junior fits into it. So I think that the other side of this though is as engineering teams, we've got to also start raising the alarm bells around how important it is to be nurturing the talent of juniors. Like we've got to make sure that we're not getting into a slow decay of our industry by doing short-term thinking where we're saying seniors ship incredibly fast, let's just do that, and not looking at the bigger picture. And like I think to your point, Stephen, I think we're underestimating how fast juniors and interns could potentially grow when they aren't got all of this baggage behind us, when they're just like, let's go, let's move. And potentially like things like pair programming, where you pull a junior into the way that you do things and like showcase how you're building the decisions you're making, the context that you're sharing. I think that type of thing would skyrocket a junior's ability to build now more than ever, because it's a transferable skill. Like AI fluency in engineering is transferable. So yeah, that's all to say, we need to start taking care to make sure we are nurturing these pipelines and not underestimating juniors. And from a junior side, it's not being too focused on the plow, but really being excited for what's potentially another golden era of software. And really like owning that and getting out there, experimenting, like don't be so afraid, like go for it, go wild, test the limits. Like that's the kind of thing you should be doing as a junior, is not being held back like, oh, I don't know if I can do it. You can do literally anything now. Like, but there's many ways in which you might be able to do that more than a senior, because they're going to look at the stuff and be like, oh, like if you don't know what you don't know, you could probably go further. It's like the whole idea of like why often it's young entrepreneurs that build some of the most fascinating businesses, is because they just aren't afraid of all of the potential pitfalls that could come their way. So I think if I had to give one bit of advice, juniors, it's like, just go for it. Just let loose, send it. You'll learn through the process. And as teams, we need to make sure we're giving you the space to do so.
Nice. Thanks, Jane. Love that positive, forward-looking view. So we've got a few moments for audience questions. But first, just maybe from our side, before we get to that, sharing like a short thing that we think Dave should do tomorrow to become more AI fluent. So I'll go first. So I think from my side, I think what's really important is experimentation in teams, but then sharing those learnings and not keeping those learnings to yourself, because you want to like, I kind of see that as like AI theater a little bit. It's like one person knowing something really well and being able to do it, but not sharing those learnings with the team, because you need to build that like shared team AI taste. And like we've ourselves have learned a lot of good lessons that we plan on sharing. So just kind of share it forward, I would say. That's mine. Cool. Stephen or Jay? What's your one practical thing?
Yeah, I would say practice the loop, practice the farming. Right? A good way to do this is find a problem that one of your colleagues have or that you have and solve it. Solve it end to end. Just solve it. Like find someone who's doing something stupid. And when you look at it, you watch them like upload a SVG to something, and then they go to remove background.com, and then there's 100 million processes in your business in your life that can just be solved. Like you don't have to go now put it into like the core code base of your like security company. Just there's so many problems to solve. Find one, solve it, and you'll learn the loop. You'll learn to figure it out. And as we're doing that time and time and time again, by the time we have to deploy it to some critical code bases, we'll be experts. So yeah, I would just say find little problems and solve them, and you can delight people. It's like an act of service too, you know.
Nice.
Yeah, cool. 100% agree with those takes. It's a skill like any other, and it's a skill that you got to actively work at. Like, don't underestimate like how much thinking and effort there is that needs to go into like being a proper AI-fluent engineer. It's not about just sitting, having your coffee, and watching the bots type away. Like, there's a lot more active thinking in the broader picture here, and it takes skill and time to be able to develop that. So start experimenting.
Cool. Okay, time for audience questions. Jay, there's a question for you. In what ways does AI fluency, in what ways does AI influence your decision making as a tech lead?
Interesting. Yes. Yeah, so I think going back to that kind of farm thing, like I am not just saying, cool, AI, please build me this. Please create this entire system. I use it strongly as a thinking partner, kind of high level, bounce ideas off it. I might set up sub agents in Claude to kind of like challenge me on things, but mostly just so that I can frame my thinking. Like I am still ultimately needing to lead that charge. I've got the context of our code bases, our patterns, what our developers are doing, what our products are doing. There's so much thought that's going into it. And AI is something that I bounce ideas off, or I get it to kind of generate diagrams about what we're talking about, generate notes about what I'm talking about, and summarize and share that with the team. So in a large ways, like my role of it is it's a thinking partner, but I've got to come up a lot with the novel patterns and where we're kind of approaching stuff. It speeds me up tons, but really I'm trying to multiply the team and using AI as a way to take out the kind of busy work in that process.
Nice. Stephen, question for you. How are you getting the individual productivity gains to team level within your team that you're doing, I guess?
To 10 level or to team level? Sorry,
team level. How are you getting at to team level?
Yeah, I think, I mean, this question should be for Jay and the team. I think you guys have done an excellent job of like creating the frameworks for this to happen, cursor rules, patterns, that kind of stuff. I think our approach at the moment is to just build enabling assets. So you basically have a iteration system loop and an asset space, call it knowledge space or whatever the story is, and your set of tools. So to Tom Sanko's question, like I think understanding agents really helps you to make the progress here. But to build a system of building within your organization, you all need to contribute to these enablement assets, like the how do we code, the cursor rules, the style guidelines, all of these things which can enable you to move a lot faster. So I was really enthused, or Jay, you mentioned last time, you're spending a lot of time thinking about the roles, each person's role in a world where no one's writing code. You know, you still want the person who's the style guidelines, like who's the conventions person. Give them the job, you know, and work with them to create those jobs. And then who's the cowboy? Give them the rapid prototyping stuff, and start to build your system for the new world, and give people jobs and roles in this new system, and not just go like, we have the laggards and the detractors and the promote. These guys are AI-fluent. These guys are not. You know, go cool. The world is changing. We recognize that as leadership. It's changed the functions to do that. I think it's easier said than done. I have not been able to achieve this, but this is my theory.
Nice. If you guys don't know what Stephen was referring to with the different roles, Jay did some recent thinking and a meetup talk on like different AI archetypes or roles within a team. And I think that also helps answer this next question, which is hacks on how to get the team to share more so that you can build an AI-fluent team. I think, yeah, like the one thing that Stephen mentioned is definitely about acknowledging like what the different strengths are in your team when it comes to AI, and like kind of using AI to leverage and like, yeah, amplify those strengths. And then like we've been doing, or I'm saying we, but our engineering team, and Jake can maybe say a bit more about that. We've been just sharing, like I mentioned before, that thing about codifying your workflows, but kind of taking the rest of the team through how they do a thing versus how someone else might do a thing, and how we can learn from each other in an effort, I think, to set up a bit more of a like, yeah, not a standard way of working, but just learning from each other and making that work for your workflow. Jay, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, hacks on how to share more between team members.
Yeah, it's a very broad topic. Definitely not one that we can cover in kind of 5 minutes, because it's really super specific to your team. But I think you need someone or a group of people on your team that are really thinking about the way that they can kind of multiply AI's efforts across what you do. So there's practical things here that I'm sure you guys are aware of, such as having really solid cursor rules that apply to different things and making sure that those are consistently applied. Like as we start writing tests, it picks up that it's a test file. Here's the rules and the sets of kind of standards for the way that we approach those things. It's also in the kind of design of your system, trying to like really compress that context window. So the old way OfferZen largely used to work from a tech perspective is everyone was their own little squad, and we kind of did what made the most sense for us. And that was fine because we kind of like each were like quite isolated, and so we could choose the right tools there. But in this new world, then you've got a proliferation. Now we've got Astro and React and SBAs and XJs, all of these things because of all these little sub teams, and that makes way less sense now because all you're doing is making AI's context window less effective. So you're almost having to think about like, how do we make sure that we reduce those moments and enable consistency so that we can all be pulling in the right direction with AI. So it really looks completely different depending on your team, but you need people that are actively thinking about this and watching as stuff is happening to see where there's inefficiencies and things are deviating from those patterns. Yeah.
Nice, thank you. There are a lot of other questions that we didn't answer. So if you feel really strongly about some of them, please reach out to us on LinkedIn, wherever. We're keen to chat more. There's going to be more meetups and more webinars like this that will tackle a lot of the questions and topics. But we're going to end the conversation here for today. Yeah, in case you miss any of the insights, we are going to share the video recording afterwards and also send you the deck. And then if you'd want to join some upcoming events, you can say yes on the poll. So say yes, or indicate which one you would love to join. And then, yeah, I just want to thank Stephen and Jay for joining in on the conversation and helping tackle this like idea of what AI fluency is. And then also thanks to the audience. We hope you got some golden nuggets out of this. And then, yeah, until next time, keep building cool things.